Hey, good morning guys. Olaf here from LSE. So today we have a little project. Got a box already here. I'll show you guys all the details in a second. On my left side I have a pressure washer engine. It's a Honda 6.5 horsepower, where I had my old pump which lasted me 2 years, and I bought it used, so it blew up finally up, and I had to get a new pump, a replacement pump for it. And in the box you're gonna see what I have here in a second, and we'll show you guys how to actually install the pump, get everything up and running proper, and what to look for when you have to replace one, and the do's and don'ts pretty much. So let me swap the camera around here in a bit, and right now it's early in the morning, so the sun is pretty much glaring in my face, but I hope you guys can see me alright. So let me swing the camera around and I'll show you guys more. Alright guys, so this is what I got yesterday, shipped to me from excuse me guys, got from Southern California, shipped to me, relabeled by UPS, and it was actually bought by Toolbarn. And so this is my old 6.5 horsepower engine, and it saw better days. We don't even have the label on it anymore on it, but it's a 6.5, and it has a drive shaft here. Drive shaft is a 3/4 drive shaft, and so if you order a new pump, a couple things you have to do is measure. So you need the total length of your drive shaft. That's from your drive shaft starting to the end. So not sure if you guys can see it, from here to here. And this has to be at least 2 inches, and we're 2.25 inches in length. The other thing you have to make sure is the diameter, spacing from bolt pattern to bolt pattern has to be roughly 2.5 in order to fit the AR pump. I already did a sneak peek yesterday. This is the AR pump. Chemical hose, mounting. Thanks for being on video, Bree. So everybody will see that you're smoking.
Right.
Hi, there's no Bree. Your video's gonna go viral because of me.
We'll see. Make sure you save one of your barcodes for later on. So this is an AR RSV3G30D, meaning 3 gallons a minute at 3100 psi. And so when you get the pump, take it out first, inspect everything. It should be pre-filled, and as you can see, there's not a glass indicator on this pump. A lot of pumps have a glass indicator here on the side or on the back side. This one does not. Same as some of the older ARs, if you guys remember. But you have your dipstick with it. So you can take from the shipment your plug out, which is a little more than hand tied in. Once you have that removed, take out of the baggie the actual correct measuring dipstick. Take the other ones, because you might need them. And so this one is pre-filled. So screw in all the way, unscrew, and measure that you have enough oil. So as you can see, that's low indicator, that's the high indicator, and right in the middle is where the oil right now is. So that's all good. I don't have to pre-fill or anything. The body port is I would say cast aluminum, and the header part is all brass. Has the unloader directly built in. Has an easy unload here in the rear. Your water in and your pressure hose in, as well as your siphon in. That's what the siphon hose is, whoever is using it. I don't use it anymore directly on the pump. I actually have a down siphon down the road on the hose. This way I can extend more in length my hoses. If you use a direct siphon here, make sure that your hose is not going longer than 100 feet. If it goes longer than 100 feet, you won't have enough suction created here in order to draw the chemicals in. That's why I'm using down the chute, because I'm running close to 200 feet hose, somewhere in the neighborhood between 175 and 185 right now. Make sure that all your seals are correctly pressed in before you assemble your pump. Make sure everything is there, everything looks good, no shipment damage. Make sure the bolt pattern is lining up, which seems to be the case. Make sure that you have your safety spline in place, which is this one. This one actually makes sure that when your engine shaft turns, that actually your pump is also turning. If you don't have that in, don't expect the pump to work. So right now it's dead center lined up here. So I have to make sure that this one is dead center as well. So there it is, dead center. And what you do is you slide it on for the first time, making sure it goes on smooth. As you can see, there's a little bit of a wiggle. But this is where the pump sits at the end. I'll take it off, but it slides on right. And just brush off a little bit with sandpaper the dirt and debris on the drive shaft. Just use some 60 grit or 80 grit just to get the dirt and debris off. Most of it is going to be rust, since this is just an iron drive shaft. Don't go too much into town. Once you have that all smoothened out, just use cloth. Oops. Just use the cloth to wipe all the debris off. If you have some left, you can use triple oil stainless steel wool. Polish everything down. So there's the spring. It's coming out. sure that that one goes back. I just want to make sure that I slide the new pump on, that everything goes smooth into place and doesn't need any force. So you don't have to do much, just so that it's all smooth, so that your pump slides on. While you're already at it, take a look at your spleen, make sure that it still is perfectly square and not worn off. If it's worn off, get a new one, because this is pretty much essentially that what keeps your engine rotating. You're gonna have issues down the road. And line it up with the drive shaft so that when you have that little tilt, which is for the slide on, that is just beyond that. Once you have that, you just slide it on. You see, it's fitting right on. There's a little bit of delay, as I can see, so I might have to do some shimming. As you guys can see, this is now the pump all the way pushed on. There's a space of, I would say, 1/8 of an inch maybe less. Let's see. Yeah, it's 1/8 of an inch, or for you guys in metric, it's gonna be 2.5 to 3 millimeters. So it's right in between. These are the screws which came with it. Let's see if these are gonna fit. If they do not fit right away, then go to Fastenal and get yourself the right screws. So in order to test it right, I have some oil spillage here. I prefer to take the engine off again, and this is how you can take the pump off. With a flathead screwdriver, you just pry in and you get it loose. See if this is the right thread. Yep, it's the right thread. So let's see that we get this spline a little bit further in. Make sure nothing else is blocking in here. So you're looking here inside and just making sure everything is good. If you see that you have some lubrication here, apply it everywhere. This way it slides easier onto the shaft and comes off as well. So normally it's being supplied already within your pump. Alright, this is now flush. So now it's flush. Sometimes you have to adjust the spline to go a little bit further in. So right now I just use what is supplied. Later on I'm going to swap them out because I'm going to use some Norlock washers in between. But right now just install it as it is supplied. Just hand tight all the bolts first. And if you're smart, you just do 3 out of 4. And with the 4th one, you just go to your bench and just verify that you have the right wrench for it, because the space is tight, as you guys can see, especially the third one down here. Always make sure you hand tie first. This way you don't strip your threads, because the engine block, especially on the more modern one, same as this one, modern I mean mid 80s and newer, you have a very high chance that it is actually only aluminum. And so if it is only aluminum, you can strip the thread actually very easily. So make sure that you have first hand tied everything in, so you don't strip your nice threads, because if you strip them, the only option you have is actually swapping out part of the engine block. This one would be the down engine part block, which you have to replace and then get a new one. Disassemble the whole engine, assemble it back, so that's why. Let's see if I have a little wrench here. Very close to 30 millimeter. See if half inch, either half inch or 30 millimeter. That's what fits what's supplied with it. So I'm just going to use a 30 millimeter, but if you have a half inch, that will do the trick as well. And as you can see, this head for the quick ratcheting doesn't fit, so there's not enough space. So you just have to use the old method. Just tie them all just a little bit snug, making sure it all fits. Give it a couple turns so that the screws and the lock washers actually starting to snug up. Take your time with this, because one of the problems you're going to have later on so that all these screws can come loose. One reason why I do not use thread locker, because later on I'm going to apply knot lock. Lock washers to it. Knot lock has a patent on it which allows essentially two washers which are sitting flat on top of each other, and so when you tie them down, there's a notching system and it clicks into place, and this click into place allows it that you tie it down more and get more of a tension to it. So in order to get it loose again, you need actually more force to get over that hump of these two washers in order to loosen up the bolt. So that's how their system works. You can look it up at Nordlock. Stephen Cox did a video about Nordlock as well, so go over to his channel and check it out. There are plenty of places which supply Nordlocks. Stephen Cox has one which supplies for the Texas area. If you don't have anything close by, they ship it for you. You can also deal with other places like Fastenal has it, but most of that I can tell you already is special order, so make sure that you don't need it right away, because They are not really carried a lot in stock because it's a new product, so not too many actually stock it and carry it. So just make sure ahead of time you have your parts together. And the big beauty with it is actually you can also order them in different finishes. So it can be in just in steel, stainless steel, etc. I prefer stainless steel all the time. So makes my life a lot easier. Okay, so that's on, that's on. This one needs more torque. This takes a little while, so I might speed this process up here. So this pump, which is a RSV series, it comes in either 3 gallons a minute or 2.5 gallons a minute. Max PSI is between 2,500 and 3,000 PSI depending on your model. And this is on the 3/4 drive shaft. If you get them for a bigger engine like 11 horsepower and up, your drive shaft is more likely going to be 1 inch. On a smaller engine like this one, it is a 3/4. And depending on that, you have to make sure you order the right model. This handlet, this booklet actually covers all of them. So here's your 3/4 and there's also your 1 inch. The 1 inch goes actually from 3 gallons all the way up to 4 gallons a minute with maximum 4,000 PSI. The PSI is for me not that important, except it should have at least 2,800. The gallons per minute is much more key. And so in here, everything is pretty much described, measurements, spray nozzle chart, what you need for what, plunger pumps. So make sure that you keep this around because it's also how to service your pump. So make all your notes also in here. This is why I keep this around. And there's a limited warranty for it, which I think is a year. And on the plunger parts, I think it's up to 5 years. They say here it's 5 years, but I'm not 100% sure if that is only applying for residential or not. Also very important is on the plunger pump here in the back, it tells you the capacity of your oil and everything, so make sure that you have that around. So what I normally do is when I have this pump installed, and as you have seen first, I took this snapshot off the pump, which is the serial number. So I'll take that, off, and put that actually on my handbook, right in the front. Put the sticker on. This way I have with it already the serial number, because this one stays in a dry condition in my file. So this way later on down the road I know what serial number I have and what I have to do in order to get it replaced if I need any service done to it, which most likely I do myself, but besides that, make sure you have that somewhere stored away. Okay. Don't go super tight down because again, this is aluminum in the back, so don't strip it. And as you can see, I already from the carriage unit, I cut off the handle because I like to have it transported in a smaller tight space so it can fit in the trunk of my car. So now this one is very tight, so what you can do is two options. You can either take this off, put a 90 degree on, or a 45 degree on, so that this one is not lining up straight. It's a little bit more in the kink. I highly recommend do not do sharp turns. So 45 is okay because the water can shoot. Everything 90 degrees, which, think about it, if you have something which goes like this, water hits it and has to go this way, it loses pressure. Where if you're going a 45, it slides. So it's like a nice curve. So make sure that you don't go too sharp in turns. This is one other reason why when you look at your guns, all the valves inside, they are only 45 degrees, so the water is just flowing freely. But yeah, this is pretty much the install. And one thing you have to make sure with these type of pumps, almost dropped it here, is as you can see I already spilled some of the oil. That when you transport it, just make sure that it is transported level and doesn't flip around in your trunk and stuff. And so when you do a longer job or you didn't use your pump pressure washer in a longer time, make sure that you check everything. And by everything I mean make sure the bolts are tight, the bolts to the deck are tight, your oil in your engine is full. Make sure that your oil for the pump is there. That's one reason why my old one blew up, because there was no way for me to measuring it. I think I have the pump here somewhere laying around, but essentially that one didn't have a stick. All it had was a very small pump with a vent shaft up here, but at the vent shaft you couldn't see what oil or how much oil is in it. And I was at the job site and all of a sudden it just locked up on the engine, killed the engine, back pressured so much that actually the shaft, the top cap just blew off and flew like 30 feet. Got it back to run, but the pump was shot in the inside because of wear, and they don't have the parts anymore for it. So I said, okay, it's time to get a new pump just to get everything going right away. And so that's why I decided to buy the AR. And so there's your oil stick. Make sure that this one fits snug in it, otherwise it starts spilling. So, but just do hand tied. Normally I use a little bit of a rag because there's oil on it, so it's slippery. Make it as tight as possible so there's no oil spilling out. It's easier for your transportation. And yeah, also when you didn't use yours long enough, make sure that you put a gas filter in. In general, gas filters saves your engine's life tenfold, because replacing this little gas filter is like $1, maybe $2. Replacing the little pump here is around $8. Replacing the carburetor can be up to like $15, and so on. So everything else is more expensive. Make sure, I have to do a little, as you can see there, one of the holding brackets broke, but it works. Make sure that your vent cap is working proper. Make sure that you do not use ethanol gas. If you can, use ethanol free, because then you can park it wherever you want for months and the gas is still good. If you have ethanol in it, there will be a separation of water happening in it, and that's no good for these carburetor driven engine. It's only for the carburetor versions. Also make sure that you check your air filter. So this one is fairly new. So this is all clean, all good. Make sure that that one is good. It goes back in place. So these are the things you check with it. On the pump, before I let you guys go, on the pump there are a couple of things you should notice. This one is very loose. As you can see, the screen comes out very easily. Don't push it in just with your thumb, because you're gonna bend and crack the screen. Always use a screwdriver and just pop it back in place. And so you can change this out. You can adapt with brass pieces a different adapter to it. With this, as further you pretty much turn it out, as looser, as meaning as less horsepower, as less PSI you're producing, as less horsepower you're actually using, because you don't build up enough high pressure to actually reach the limit of your engine. As further you go down, you actually compress the spring, and so there's a spring here inside, and as more you compress it, as more the water gets built up, meaning as more PSI you're going to shoot out of your gun. So I cranked mine relatively far down, but that's pretty much it. Later on I'm going to swap this out with a blank, because I don't want to use it at all. I don't want to have any air being sucked in or anything. But if you're just using on a residential purpose, certainly you can use it. It works flawlessly. But that's pretty much it. Thank you guys for watching. Oh yeah, one more thing. As you can see, and this is a rare occasion, this plate here in the back, you can take this out. You can actually take this plate out and put it on the opposite side and change the internal drive shaft to this side. That's why you see bores and threads being drilled on this side as well. So if you, for whatever reason, need to have the pump facing the other way, you can do it, but it's a very tedious job, because you have to take the whole internal assembly apart and swap it around. So I highly not recommend that, but that's it. The other thing is, here's your backflow. So if your pump is circling too much water, it starts dripping down here, so that's normal. If you have a water tank, like when you have a trailer set up, run this back to your water tank, but let's not just drop it into the tank. Let it run somewhere on the side, so that you don't create bubbles in your tank, so that this one doesn't suck in water here, which has air in it. Otherwise you run into the situation that you can get cavitation, which means, in other words, that these three pistons getting air in, and when there's air in, they can't compress good and also heat up, because they use two factors for cooling. One is the water to cool the inside here in the brass head, and oil for lubrication and coolant in the backside for where the piston going up and down. So make sure that you don't get any air in there. But yeah, thanks for watching, guys. This is actually how you install an RSV AR pump. And if you like this video, please click the thumb up button. I think it's down on the, for you guys, down on the right now, and down below is also a subscribe button. So if you guys are interested to see more, I'm doing pressure washing for business, and so this is my little residential motor, which I use with me when I go to areas where my long hoses from the trailer would be just an overkill, like when I'm just doing a back porch or a driveway or something small up to 1,000 square foot. I use this one, and so the use out of this is I use it between once and twice a week, sometimes 3 times, but that's pretty much pushing it. If you use something more frequent, go with a bigger engine, ideally 11 horsepower, 13 horsepower or more. If you have the money, go into a twin mode, I've down here actually already a new engine standing, which I'm going to use for a belt-driven system. This is direct drive. Belt-driven means that your engine goes onto a pulley. The pulley goes onto a belt. The belt goes to another pulley, which is actually attached to the pump. And you can change the ratio. It has a lot of benefits if you go that way, because the vibration of your engine is not transferred to the pump, and if something is locking up in the pump, it's your belt which actually gets fried, because the belt starts slipping and burning through. It's like the same as a lawnmower. Pretty sure you guys have seen that before on a lawnmower deck. When you're riding lawnmower, those belts, it's the same principle here. So they start slipping and then burning through, and that's when you smell the rubber, but you don't destroy a pump. Those pumps, once you go into that range, those pumps cost you $800, $900, $1,000, $1,500 for the big ones. This small one here, I paid around $200. It varies in price, so make sure you're getting a good deal. I got a deal from Tool Barn with a 5% off, and everything I paid include free shipping, $193 over the counter. Took a week to get here, so plan ahead if you have an issue. Work around it, but definitely worth the investment. Way better also in warranty issues, because it's fully rebuildable, so you don't have to call the manufacturer and say, oh, I need this part, this part, this part. This is a common product carried by most pressure washing companies, so if something goes, you get the parts, which is key, especially if you use it for business. If you're residential, you can vary. You can get these pumps as cheap as $175, $185. You can get the very small pumps. They are like $100. And so think about it. You pay for your pressure washer, which is gasoline driven, around $400 or $500 and up. So if your pump goes, you don't have to throw away the engine. Keep using the engine. The engine lasts you, good maintained, 15 years, 20 years. Your pump lasts you, depending on their usage, 5 years to 10 years. If the pump is fully rebuildable, like this one, it definitely can last as long as the engine, or even longer, depending on how well you're taking care of it. Also make sure that you drain the oil out. So every now and then, open up the side here, let all the oil run off, empty it out, replace it with a brand new one. Go by the book what goes in. There's a lot of debates, a lot of manufacturers using different types of oils for good reason. If you are in a crunch punch and you're in the field and you do not have your normal oil with you, I highly recommend go to a Tractor Supply or Rural King, any of that nature, because they have hydraulic oil. You get the thickest hydraulic oil you can get and just pour it in, and then back at home, dump it out, put the proper oil in. Those pumps can run on hydraulic oil. Hydraulic oil is pretty cheap, affordable, and does do the job if you have the right consistency. So do your research, and if you're smart, always have a little jug, like a quart or so, with you in your toolbox, in your car, in your truck, somewhere stored away. So if you run into the situation before you run into the job, just make sure. Sometimes it happens that the seal breaks while you're on the job, and especially if the seal breaks here to the drive shaft, which can happen, then the oil backflows back in here and drips down, and you see a lot of puddle. And that's what happened to the other pump before it blew up. But I had to bust through it. I put some actually chain oil from a motor, from a chainsaw in, which worked, but highly not recommended. So but it got it lubricated to the point that it was running without overheating and burning up. Not a solution for long, but I just had to finish up the job. It took me like another hour, and back home I just took the pump apart, looked inside, and already saw big damage. And there's a bearing inside in the pump I had, and that bearing was completely shot. It rubbed out from the center shaft, pretty much all the guides and everything. So I said, okay, can I rebuild it? No. Okay, replace it. And that's when I highly recommend go with an AR. Spend the extra money because you get the parts, and they are really not that expensive if you think about it. Around $200. This price I think was $399 or $349 at one point in time. This one is an older model, but it's very reliable. So again, guys, thanks for watching. Have a good one. So now you can see in a second I'm doing a test run with it, and the knob above the pump, you can adjust the pressure. So I have to adjust the pressure a little bit down because the pump is set for 5 horsepower all the way to 7.5, so I can't run it on full max because it will bog down pretty much the engine. But I set it up to run on as high as much possible without bogging down the engine too much. There's a sweet spot, you can hear it when you run it actually, especially when you release the trigger and pull the trigger on the pressure washer gun. You hear it on the pump if it winds or not. As long as it's not winding, it's all good. As you can see, it works flawlessly. I ran it for 15 minutes straight, no problem. And you see the vibration. This is because of the iPhone camera being used. But that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching, guys.